Welcome to the Mike White Podcast, where I, Mike White, share my conversations and book reviews through my journey to learn all that goes on in this amazing world. Buckle up and enjoy the ride. All right, welcome to the Mike White Podcast. Today I'm joined by Ben Justman with Peony Lane Winery. He's the owner and vintner. Is that how you say it, vintner?
It is.
Well, I just met you at a Bitcoin meetup, and I've seen you on Twitter. Everyone should follow him at Ben Justman for some great Bitcoin and wine content. He is the Bitcoin wine guy, as I proclaim him that. I don't know if anyone else does, but yeah, Ben, thanks for coming down here.
Yeah, of course. Glad I ran into you. That was a fun meetup the other morning.
Yeah, it was at the Meteor where they have wine. It's probably not as good as Peony Lane, but I wanted to get into your story and your background. And starting off, you were talking about being raised on a sustainable farm, so that's quite a drastic different childhood than most people here in the States. So how do you end up there?
So I was actually born and grew up a little bit in Austin, and my dad always wanted to grow all his own food. And so it got to a point where he could ultimately retire from at least the financial side of a lot of his work and wanted to just work on his own farm and grow all his own food. So he was searching all over the country with my mom for the right piece of land, the right farm to buy, and came across a spot in Western Colorado that checked all his boxes, being close to a river, being organic, being surrounded by a lot of other organic farms, and being close to a cool town. And so when I was 8, we moved there, and my dad started building our house and moved in a few years later, and then they focused on the farming. So they, have a huge greenhouse, tons of fruit trees, goats, sheep, chickens. The idea is just, be self-sufficient, grow all your own food, live a super healthy life. And I think as a kid, you don't really, I love the freedom. I would just go hang out at the river and just do whatever I wanted all the time. But at least like outside that freedom, and you don't really appreciate like the farm stuff because you're just like, oh cool, every summer I have to work now on the farm. Nice. So grew up kind of hating the vineyard work and everything, and but now as I'm older, it's like so nice to be out there.
Yeah, how was that? Like, what were your early duties from an 8-year-old to? You got a good 10 years there on the farm. What kind of work did you do?
When I was 8, like I was not working on the farm. It was kind of more getting close to the teenage years. My dad wanted to make sure that I had a job, and like during school, school was my job. I was always I was a 3-sport athlete, so I was doing a ton of sports. But during the summer, started to ramp up as far as like then getting into a full-time job of being in the vineyard for 8 hours, or pruning fruit trees, or just like whatever the farm needs to have done. It's not hot like here, but it's hot as in Colorado. The sun just beats down on you. It's it's hard working on the farm. So grew up doing that, being intimately involved, and wanted to get out of there and never thought I'd move back.
So you're talking about being a 3-sport athlete working on a farm. Mm-hmm. I'm big into discipline, and I think you have to have discipline doing that kind of stuff. Do you think that you inherently had it, or over time growing up, it kind of instilled that in you, and did you realize it back then?
It's something that discipline's something that I'm both like really good and really bad at. And I guess it's something that I see the value in, and I always want to improve. And it's honestly something that I've always seen like just respected in people who have been in any form of the military. Like I respect the discipline that you learn or have inherently built, like whatever people in the military just like seem to have that. And I don't know, I'm almost envious because like I know I have it in some ways and not in others. And to work manual labor, you kind of have to just go for it and be strong and get things done.
Yeah. And I think the point you talk about in the military, there is like a dichotomy there, whereas like the discipline they teach us in our little mini boot camp I went to OCS, it's like the instant willing obedience to orders. And I don't think that's a good quality. Like discipline means just doing what people say that you need to do, or just doing something because you're told to do it. That I don't think would have any value. As an entrepreneur yourself, you would be screwed because no one really knows what to do. So I think it's more it's a dichotomy where there's a type of discipline where you have to integrate your values and be disciplined within yourself, and then it frees up other things to do, which I think you definitely have. But looking back at your time growing up on the farm and playing three sports, I'm sure a small town, what do you take away from that, and that you're thankful for now that maybe you weren't back in the day?
Well, I was just always being active,
Yeah.
always kind of having something to do, and like a bunch of different things. So yeah, I'm super happy that now it's like, oh, cool. You want to go play this sport? Well, I may have never played it, but like I'm probably going to be decent at it because you build that hand-eye coordination, and you just kind of build you have this incessant need to be active. Like if you sit around for a little while, like right now I'm dealing with a knee injury and I'm not very active and I'm going a little crazy.
Curls. Just
Yeah. just
this upper
just
body.
huge biceps this time of my life. Yeah. So, and with the farming, I guess it's like, I met a friend at a farmer's market, and he had a farm, and we were just trying to get to know each other. And, I'd go to his place after the farmer's market for a beer sometimes. And he asked me to help him work and like just put his greenhouse together after the farmer's market. Not crazy, but a couple hours. And I'm happy to do that. I'm just like this guy. I'm trying to get to know him and hang out. And a couple minutes in, he's just like, wow, you know how to work. That's awesome. And it's just like the things of like, what do I do next? Like, let's think forward. And a lot of people don't really know how to, like a lot of people have jobs and they work hard and everything, but like knowing how to work manually, physically with someone else and like do a project together is kind of a different thing. Oh, yeah. And it's super real world skills. So,
and because I would imagine all the jobs on the farm, if you do it more efficiently, you're going to get done faster. You're going to have more time to do other things that you might want to do. Now you go to a corporate world, you go outside of a job here, you're punching that clock. You're going to be in there 8 hours every day, no matter how well you do it. And so you hear those stories of like going to the bathroom, just scrolling on their phone, and like they're having to limit they're timing you of how long you go to the bathroom and stuff like that, which you totally escape by doing what you're doing.
Well, to a degree, but like when I'm a 15-year-old working on the farm, like all that work's going to get done anyway. I didn't really care. So yeah, I was trying to take longer bathroom breaks and all that stuff. And honestly, like any hourly job I've had, I've kind of been that way, because it's like, well, in my head, I'm like, it doesn't make a difference. I'm just here for this long anyway. I'm going to get paid anyway. Like when I'm more of an entrepreneur. So like I'm kind of on the outlier of the spectrum. I just don't do well when I love like being part of a team and working with others, but like when it's just show up and do your job for 8 hours, no matter what, it just kind of suffocates me. So any job I've had, I've kind of just been down to do as minimal as possible, don't get fired, and do fine. But like once I have my own thing, then it's a whole different story.
And I think we'll talk about this more again, but the incentives are huge, and people think that these little central planning actions in the economy aren't going to have big impacts, and even they don't realize all the trickle down effect and other unintended consequences as well with incentives. But so you're talking about doing your jobs before what you're doing now, entrepreneur. So you go to college, you get a geology degree, and when was the moment that now you're working in a geology type of industry? I don't know exactly, but was there a moment when you decided, hey, this isn't going to be my career?
Yeah. So right after college, I ski bummed and then moved to Vietnam for a year. And in Vietnam, I got really bored, and I was teaching English. That was really fun. So I realized like I love teaching. I love being with kids and public speaking, like just being in front of people. And I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. and a couple other books that I was hell. I also read The Only Game in Town, which is this really dense book about central banking.
Yeah.
So I was set up to be a Bitcoiner, but I didn't become one because that switch was never flipped. But anyways, I realized that I was definitely probably more of an entrepreneur
Yeah.
than not. And but I'd never done that. Like I had I'd done it maybe, but like as a kid, I would pick blackberries and sell them at a little stand, and I made money, but like there was never that total link for me because my parents would just put that money in my savings account and then they'd pay for what I needed. So I never had like the visceral, this is my money and I only have this much money and this is what it buys me. So it never kind of grabbed me as a kid, but realized that. And then I figured, well, I should try and give my geology career a shot. It was really fun to study in college and it's interesting. And got a job mapping, like physically hand mapping, drawing geologic maps.
Wow.
Which was cool because it was like, well, I have freedom to just listen to podcasts all day. And I'm not staring at a computer the whole time. So that was cool. But it was also, a little boring. So for the first year of that, I was just looking for another geology job. I was like, cool, this is a stepping stone. I got here and then I'll find something better. And then I just kept finding other jobs to apply to and then kind of thinking about what they really were. And I realized there was no fit. So then I started a couple little sticker side hustles, like just trying to sell stickers, and those weren't really going anywhere, but
Online, just like
some online, but like the idea was my buddy who is a graphic designer would design the stickers and I would kind of like go with these templates and go to stores and be like, hey, you guys don't have any stickers for your store.
Yeah.
So I would be the salesman and he would be the designer.
awesome.
And it was both of our side hustles. Life kind of just got in the way, but never went anywhere. So after a year at the geology job, I was like, okay, well, cool. So geology is not the move. What the hell am I going to do? And just kind of knowing at that point I wanted to start a business, but I didn't know what I could do. I didn't know if I should get a job and learn skills and then start a business. Like I studied geology. What am I going to do? And then I just was on the phone with my dad one day and he kind of just broke down the numbers of a winery. And I was like, that makes sense. I'll do that.
And are you a big wine drinker at this point? Or?
No,
not
at all.
Yeah.
Really not at all. Like I had no idea. I was kind of getting into trying different whiskeys when, no, that was even after. So yeah, I didn't know anything about wine,
Numbers
but
don't lie,
also
though.
I knew my dad didn't know anything about wine and his sort of just hobby winemaking that he did as a business for a couple of years was really successful. So I was like, something good is going on there. If my dad can do it, I can replicate it.
That's awesome. And so while you were doing your job, drawing out the sketches, listening to podcasts, what kind of podcasts were you listening to? Because I think that's a great way to learn for anyone that's, my dad worked the night shift at Publix the last 2 years. And that's how he got into, like, really understood Bitcoin. Just 8 hours, sweeping the floor, stacking the shelves, listening to Bitcoin podcasts.
Yeah, unfortunately, I was being brainwashed.
Shitcoiners or?
No, I didn't. No crypto or anything, just NPR.
NPR?
Yep.
Oh, okay. I mean, it's not the worst.
I say that because in my Bitcoin, like I was really NPR financial podcasts.
Okay.
And I say brainwashed because of the amount of unlearning I had to do to be able to grasp Bitcoin.
Yeah.
There's like just so many ways to talk around issues, and I came away being like, okay, man, this stuff's so interesting. Like you keep diving deeper, and there's all these new things to learn. Wow, I don't understand anything. And then figuring out Bitcoin was a lot of like, oh, cool. So that was just a ridiculous made up assumption or untrue or just like, it's not a system that really makes sense, but you listen to these podcasts and they keep trying to make it make sense.
Yeah, I think it's ingrained in this hurdle rate they have. Everyone's trying to beat inflation, which they take from the CPI, which in itself is a very shaky assumption, as we can see. And everyone's just trying to find different vehicles, different ways. You had the 60-40 rule forever, and you can try all you want, but with the system so jacked up in my mind that none of that's going to work. You got to have sound money. Like you can play all your fiat games, but it's going to end the same.
Yeah. At that point, I was like playing the fiat games in the risk off way you should be playing them. I had 3 to 6 months in a savings account that lended 2%, which was CPI, which to me at that point was inflation. And I had my index fund, my Roth IRA, just all automatic, sticking to a budget, doing it right.
Yeah.
And then in 2019, the repo rate shock brought all the interest rate on savings accounts down to 0.
Yeah.
And so that was my oh, something's wrong here. I can't keep up with inflation just by saving money anymore. And it took maybe a year from that, but ultimately that oh, something's wrong here, I need to look for a solution, ultimately led me to Bitcoin.
So what was your first kind of Bitcoin moment of where you started thinking, hey, this thing actually has value? It's not some crazy useless internet money.
So I bought Bitcoin for the first time in the 2017 run up. I was living in Vietnam, and I remember walking into a room and some friends of mine were like, look at this coin. It's I think they were pointing at Litecoin. They're like, it's going crazy. And they're like, this one's going to be next. No idea what they're talking about. It's just, they're just trying to make money. And so, I bought Ethereum and I bought Bitcoin just so that I could buy XRP.
Okay.
And so by the time my Bitcoin was able to move off of Coinbase to be able to buy XRP, it was literally the top of XRP. So that was basically all the shitcoining I ever did was $400 in 2017. And then I kind of just left it. And getting in, I knew that I was never going to be a stock picker or reading about how to pick stocks. I was I'm never going to do that. So never really wanted to invest in a specific thing. And I had moved, when I moved from Denver when I was working my geology job back home to Peony to build my house, I moved in with a good friend from high school who was a Bitcoiner.
Okay.
And so he and I, he's the smartest guy I know. So of course we have great conversations, great geopolitical, money, finance, all this stuff. And so he has the Bitcoin frame of reference in his head, and so he kept asking me to look, and I building the house, I just started listening to Bitcoin podcasts. So,
and that's I think a great point about the number go up interest, which some people think volatility scares them away, but I think ultimately it brings more interest and more credibility to Bitcoin. When it goes down, it hurts, but I mean I probably wouldn't have gotten into it if it didn't shoot up a couple years ago, and it makes you wonder, okay, why is this going that way? And then you see when it falls, all these crypto ones, and it kind of makes sense. Okay, they're not really backed by anything, like proof of work, proof of stake, decentralization, and you start going down those rabbit holes and learn more and more as oh, Bitcoin is the one. But so
number go up makes you look.
Yeah.
And then if you're there to look long enough, look hard enough, then you see it for what it is.
And I think you have to see it yourself too. Have you ever convinced anyone to buy Bitcoin?
Yeah, I've convinced plenty of people to buy Bitcoin.
Okay.
I think that's not orange pilling. I've convinced one person to be oh, okay, I'm going to take this seriously. And it was the first time I ever not too long after I got into Bitcoin, it was the first time I was ever I can answer all your questions. I'm shilling Bitcoin and you're coming back at me, and I've got an answer for all of them. And he got convinced, and he's been on it ever since. And that's you feel amazing. Have you?
No, I'm jealous. I need to learn your ways because I talk about Bitcoin all the time, but I don't think I've actually orange pilled anyone.
Well, you don't need to learn my ways. I'm 1 for a million. So,
but so you were talking about Vietnam too. So you learned about it in Vietnam, and I think of Vietnam. I've never been, but I mean, communism won. They're still technically a communist country. How was that just a weird pocket of people interested in crypto, or do you think there's like hope for those type of countries when they realize, hey, this is actually a way for us to have a little bit of freedom in a government that does not like that?
So first of all, the friends that I was referring to were from England. Like I didn't really make any Vietnamese friends. I had a couple around, but like the language barrier was mostly an issue.
Yeah.
So that said, the people in Vietnam, I went there being like, this is a communist country, you know? And then you're there, and I spent my first week or so in Hanoi, the northern capital, and there was people protesting a decent amount. I mean, that's super dangerous to do, but there were people doing it. And generally there was, I mean, I didn't get a sense, and granted the language barrier is there, but like, I didn't really get a sense that anyone was in favor of the government. And for the most part, everyone seemed to understand like it's corrupt and it's messed up, but let's not focus on that. We have each other. And also everyone was like so entrepreneurial. It was amazing. Like everyone had their hustle and then their other hustle, and they helped out with their buddy's hustle.
Yeah.
And part of that is like you see a white person and you're trying to make their money, but at the same time, like I respect the hustle, and they got after it. So being around that energy and then reading Rich Dad Poor Dad was like, oh, I love this energy. I want to be an entrepreneur. And so, yeah, their spirit is incredible. And right now, like I might be slightly off with these dates, but generally they opened up for tourism in 94. And so opening up for tourism causes a large economic boom. People start coming in, free trade or more trade and everything. And so there was also a huge baby boom around then. And so all those kids are in their 20s. And there's a huge amount of 20-year-old Vietnamese people. Like the population is very skewed young. Mm-hmm. And all those people spend time like playing video games and doing crypto. And they're like, Vietnam is one of the highest crypto adoption companies or countries in the world. And I imagine that has something to do with like, their money is, no one trades in the Vietnamese dong, and it's inflated a ton, and it's a way to just get around and do whatever you want. But it's so many young people, and young people seem to be driving new tech adoption. So
do you see the countries other than like the United States pushing for Bitcoin before it becomes mainstream here?
Well, we don't need it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we do, but in comparison, we don't need it at all. And and throughout our parents' lives, especially because we learn from our elders, we learn from history, Bitcoin has not been like needed. You can do well without it. But now, I mean, the paradigm has shifted for the United States. So like, we'll see where that goes. But there's all these countries that it's just, there's people that live there that they see the inflation and they're finally have a way out. And so, yeah, they're going to drive adoption first because they see it first. We don't need to see it.
Mm-hmm. And that's a hard way to orange pill the people here, like business owners especially, mm-hmm. Where if they're going, you got to use the dollar. Like there's no way around it. And I think that's fine. But the savings vehicle, even here, even as good as our dollar is, you're losing inflation every year. Mm-hmm. Every year you're taking a haircut. So it'd be crazy to put that in a bank, to me, when you can put it into hard money like Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm. At least above, like, the thing is there's no good money right now.
Yeah.
I mean, Bitcoin, the monetary policy makes it good money, but like you can't just rely on your savings on something that drops 70 or 80% occasionally. I mean, you can play it right, but if it's your savings, you don't want to be playing it.
So how do you handle that as a business owner and that accepts Bitcoin?
Mm-hmm. So I think two things. If my business was bigger, I may handle it differently. Right now I'm a one-man show for the most part. I get some friends during certain times, but I'm not kind of just comfortable with the size I'm at. And so that means that when I accept Bitcoin as a business, it's kind of marked as a cash transaction, and then I stack Bitcoin. And I do like 5 to 10% of my business and growing mm-hmm. in Bitcoin. And that's awesome. But it's not over the top where I have to onto the second thing, I don't have to convert any of it to dollars. So I'm able to take that haircut on my like spendable revenue, I guess, and just put some away. And so it's just a savings account. And it's kind of like, look, I'm investing a ton into the business and growing, but like, I also kind of want to have some saved back just in case. And maybe I don't need to deploy everything into the business right away.
And I think this is a great time to start doing that for businesses because the Bitcoin adoption is still fairly small, where most businesses can take that haircut and just save it and not need it for operating costs. I would imagine at this size, you say it was like 5% Bitcoin.
Yeah, 5 to 10.
Yeah. So as long as you have that, I mean, a good business would have some reserves.
Well, it depends on your margin. So like I have a pretty high margin product. So a few bottles of wine turned into Bitcoin is fine for me. But if you need to like continue reinvesting everything to just continue building on that with a small margin, it's definitely harder.
I guess there would be a percentage too, at which point, like even where you're at now is like, okay, I need to sell some of this Bitcoin to keep going.
Yeah. But I try and think about it slightly differently. Like that is the case, but given my technology stack, I'm able to accept. So let's say 100% of my sales are in Bitcoin. The company I use called Ibex takes all those Lightning transactions and then sends me one transaction at the end of the day, just to cover everything, put it in one UTXO. And I can manage that to be like, no, I only want 50% of that in Bitcoin. Send me the rest in dollars.
Yeah.
So if I ever get to a point where I'm accepting quote unquote too much Bitcoin, I'm going to mess with that before I sell any Bitcoin because I just want to be in this like headspace where I never sell Bitcoin. That's the last thing I do.
And the IBEX product, I didn't know that until I heard you talking about it. That seems like a no-brainer if you're so you know for sure, like you said, this is going to be my percentage. Where'd you learn about that?
At a beef, have you heard of the Beef Initiative?
Yeah.
So they had a conference out where I am, and I was kind of just like, holy crap, there's a Bitcoin conference 20 minutes from my house in the middle of nowhere, Colorado. So I asked how I could get involved and went and met the IBEX representatives, and it was just like perfect fit. I'd been looking for a way to accept Bitcoin and do it the right way, and they were perfect for me.
So if there's any business owners out there, they can just go over to their website and get set. They can help them get all set up and start accepting Bitcoin.
Yeah, it was so easy. It was so easy. And then also I met the Michael from Oshi.
Yeah.
And got set up there. And so I do all my Bitcoin sales online, at least through Oshi.
And Michael sets up like pretty much all the events here in Austin for the Austin Bitcoin Club, the Bitcoin breakfasts, just a really genuine good guy.
Totally.
Which I found in Bitcoin, that's like, it's rare. It's like the exception to find that kind of shitcoiner just trying to make kind of slimy, make a ton of money and get out of there and run.
That side of it definitely just is not prevalent. Like there's not that kind of person. That said, like Bitcoiners range all over. I mean, there's going to be Bitcoiners that you're like, that guy's a dick and not, but, for the most part, yeah, I went to that conference and it was like, wow, these are my people. How can I be around these people more?
And so how do you, use Oshi in your business? So
because of alcohol restrictions, it's not as easy for me to accept Bitcoin as I would like. To ship across state lines, I have to use the third party. So they sell to the customer, I sell to them. They're my middleman. They take a cut and process all the payments. And I'm the only winery begging them to accept Bitcoin. So they're not even willing to like hear me out and be like, hey, you don't have to touch Bitcoin. Just like take it as dollars. Like it doesn't matter. But they're not even willing to hear me out. So to simplify things, I just use Oshi for my Bitcoin sales. They go through O3, they buy with Bitcoin. And then unfortunately they have to do a second transaction in fiat with my shipping company to get around the alcohol regulations to ship across state lines for shipping and taxes.
And then the customers buying from Oshi, they get sats back, I imagine. And do you get any sats or anything like that?
Well, if you sign up using promo code Peony Lane,
okay,
I get 1% of every transaction that you make.
Yeah, do that.
Which is kind of tight, but at the same time, like I'm just here to spread Bitcoin adoption, and yeah, I'll sell some wine, but like being an avenue to use your Bitcoin is super cool.
I think you guys, the entrepreneurs, the creators, producers, are huge right now because people are going to start seeing your competitors out there. You're going to see, hey, wait, this guy's getting all this extra like eyes on his product and revenue from Bitcoin. Like, what is this Bitcoin? And who knows? In a year from now, you might be making the wine initiative out there. You have a like group of, what do you call yourselves?
Natural winemakers.
Oh, natural. Okay.
Yeah.
What's a vintner?
Vintner. Yeah.
Never heard that.
It's just another term
Same
for
thing?
winemaker, but
Okay.
I make natural wine, so it's an easier phrase, I guess.
Okay. I love it. Now, talking about wine, we haven't got into your product. So why go natural wine? Why you could have just made regular wine, just buy your grapes from, wherever every year, change it up and have kind of more consistency. What's the natural wine process?
That's kind of the beauty is I couldn't have gone the normal way. I couldn't have made conventional wine because I don't know how to. And this is my dad did fine and he didn't know anything. And there must be something special there. And what's special is my dad's farming practices and just like letting the land do itself, and not disturbing things, not adding any chemicals. And just the beautiful thing about wine is if you farm the right way, and you get good grapes and you just kind of be a shepherd and get out of the way, you get good wine. Like wine makes itself if you let it. And with natural wine, I'm using the wild yeast in the vineyard, so that kind of gives it a unique flavor. I'm also not adding anything during the winemaking process, so it's literally just you and the grapes drinking it. So if I was trying to make conventional wine, I would have this direction of I want the wine to taste like this. No matter what the grapes, maybe I get the grapes, it adjusts my stance a little bit. But with natural wine, it's cool. I have good grapes. I wonder how these are going to express, and just following along for the journey and being a shepherd, putting it in the right place to succeed. So I don't have winemaker training. Like I literally just started making wine, and we have this amazing vineyard and get amazing grapes that do all the work for me. And that's the beauty in natural winemaking.
So you talk about you're using the natural yeast. So does that mean if I'm a customer, I buy your wine every year, and every year you may have a slightly different taste. So every bottle every year is unique. It would seem. I think that's a huge benefit. Like
Yeah.
especially as if you want to collect wine, if you're a connoisseur and you're trying to find all the different flavors out there. That's and it's per barrel. Is it per barrel, or how does that process work? So getting from taking the grapes, I don't know if it's too long to. We got time, right?
No, it's easy. Just go back to the first thing you said. Like in natural wine, you definitely get more variability year to year, or are more susceptible to it. And I think there's, like you said, beauty in that. You really get the high highs, and hopefully you don't get the low lows, but generally you're all going to be in a similar range. And then some years you just have amazing years. And in conventional wine, you get that too. But the more a person does, the less variability there is. And cool, like you have a wine that generally tastes the same every year. You also probably have a lot of crap in that wine that you don't want to be drinking.
Yeah.
And all like, yeah, it's cool to me to drink a fleet of wines and see a huge difference between them year to year. And the wild yeast does something in that, because it's a slightly different yeast and bacterial composition that's doing my fermenting every year. But it's also, the biggest part is just the grapes and the growing season. So in winemaking, we harvest our grapes in the first or second weekend of October. And it's really dependent on when our first freeze is, because we're growing Pinot Noir at the highest elevation that grapes are grown in North America. And so it's never been a problem that grapes get too ripe. It's always, oh crap, it's freezing tomorrow, we got to pick.
Wow.
So we base our decision off that adds some variability. Sometimes it's a little bit more ripe than others. And once we pick it, then I put it through a crusher and destemmer. So it takes all the stems out, crushes the grapes. And so you get like a skins, seeds, juice mixture. and that has the wild yeast in it already. So then you just let that sit, and in a couple days it really starts fermenting, and you punch it down twice a day. So you just take a puncher, and it's in these big 4x4 vats, and punch down, because the CO2 that's released in the fermentation process pushes all the skins up. And so you just want to keep wetting those and mixing it all around so that temperature stays even, and the fermentation, or the yeast cells have things to grab onto. There's a lot of different things, but that ferments for 2 weeks, and then it finishes, and I put it in a press, and I have a barrel press, so I manually like crank it and press all the juice into barrels. And then once it's in barrels, I touch it every 4 to 6 weeks or so. It does undergo a secondary fermentation process called malolactic fermentation, which just changes the acid profile, and you can stop that or keep it there. I like to keep it there, and a lot of red wines do. It kind of just makes it a little bit more of a smooth mouthfeel.
Okay.
And so that happens, and then every 4 to 6 weeks, the barrels are breathable, so I fill them up with wine again.
Okay. So do you have like instructions written down, or like this is quite the process?
Well, so my dad had been doing it.
Okay.
Right. So he'd been doing it as like a hobby winemaker.
Yeah.
Like I said, he wanted to grow all his own food. And then he chopped down a block of apple trees that weren't producing and just got convinced to plant grapes. And once those started producing, he was like, well, I guess I'll make my own wine also.
So you said the first 2 weeks after you pick them and you press them, and after that you're pretty much mixing all that by hand every day. You're just going in there and just punching it down every day.
Yeah. So first thing when I wake up, and last thing before bed. So yeah, there are nights when I'm like, I've just worked a 14-hour day, lay down, it's like 11 o'clock. And I'm like, oh crap. I got to go out and do this. But yeah, every day for 2 weeks. And it's not just like, I have multiple fermentations going. So
Yeah.
once I start, then it's like a month and a half of doing that.
Even before then, are you hand picking all the grapes from the vines?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a machine that does that now, or is everything like
there are machines, and they don't do as clean of a job, so they get a lot more leaves, sticks, everything. My farm's always going to be hand-picked.
Does that take a full 12-hour day or multiple days?
Yeah, sometimes multiple days, depending on the crew. Okay. It's kind of tough because like a lot of our farm we can do with one person, and then harvest season comes around, and you're like, we got to go. And by the time grapes come out, they're kind of the last thing that come out in where I am, and so all the other farms have mostly sent their crews home. So we're always skeleton crew when we pick, but get the job done.
Yeah, because it's not they're not full-time employees at all, I'd imagine. So
seasonal.
How do you find these people?
We've been there for 20 years and just have connections and everything. So
that's awesome. Mm-hmm. Shake your vintner's hand, be part of the community, and you'll find people that want to pick grapes for sure. If I was out there, that'd be cool to see the whole process.
We mostly, there's certain people we pay that are professionals and good.
I can like learn it in a couple hours.
These guys have just been working on farms for years. You could not keep up. Like,
I believe you.
You could be a hard worker, and they're a way ahead of you. It's amazing. So we pay those guys, and then a lot of times we'll have like a little party and give people wine because it's romantic. Like, let's go pick grapes, honey. But it's hard work.
You could sell it as like an event, not like the stuff you want in bulk, but like little like mini events. I don't know if that's be profitable.
I could. I don't really want to. It's so much more profitable to make good wine.
Yeah, good wine.
I don't want to manage a ton of people.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
That I don't know, at least, it's hard. It's like, yeah, it's romantic, but it's hard work. So a lot of people do want to come out and just let's go pick grapes. It'll be fun, like going apple picking. But it's like, no, we're kind of serious and trying to get this done. So.
No, I totally understand. And then I just want to make sure I understand this process. You said after they're in the barrel, you have 4 weeks later, you have to do something again? Yeah.
So about every 4 to 6 weeks, it relatively variable, and it's not like an exact science, but the barrels breathe. And so that's the aging part of the aging process, is that little interaction with air. It's very controlled, but depending on the temperature of my wine room, which changes based off the season, but it's relatively fixed, there will be wine that escapes. So it just seeps slowly throughout the wood. And I put anywhere from like a bottle to a liter every month into the barrel,
Okay.
just
Of new,
on top of it.
of new wine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Same wine, but I've kept it in smaller containers
That doesn't seep.
that don't seep
Okay.
to refill.
So these barrels, what are they made of?
Oak.
Oak.
So I use French oak for my barrels, but they're mostly neutral. So I've used them for a little while, and there's not as much like oak flavor that's interplaying within the wine. So I will add oak cubes to those barrels to change the amount of oak. It gives me a little bit more flexibility, and also I kind of like the flavor of Hungarian oak. So I've been using Hungarian oak in all my wines.
Oh, awesome. So you just chop it up and throw it in because it's gonna get filtered out. So
Totally.
how long does a barrel last before you need to restock?
If you take care of them, they'll last for a long time. That said, think of it like a tea bag. And when you get a fresh barrel, there's a lot of oak flavor that comes out of it. And those barrels are really expensive. So I don't find it worthwhile for me to use them. And if I did, I would be using if I was making 10 barrels of one variety, I would be anywhere from 1 to 4 of those, and then a bunch of neutral barrels. So a barrel, once its oak flavor has been tapped, will last a long time. If you drop it or something, it might break, and I replace barrels occasionally, but there's no specific end date for a barrel.
Well, especially if you can supplement that flavor with the cubes. Seems like that's the way to do it.
Yeah, and it seems to work really well, and it's just not reasonable to do new oak. So
Okay, so we got them in the barrels. They're ready to go. Technically, you can drink it whenever at this point, right? Once it's all filtered out. When do you decide, okay, I'm going to bottle them?
So I don't filter.
Okay.
Just to be clear on that. When it's in the barrel, everything just settles down to the bottom.
Nice.
And I can just take it off the top and be clear.
Okay.
So some people think that filtering wine takes out some of the awesome nutrients in it, and so I don't, and it works great, and might as well keep it as natural as possible.
Yeah.
And I bottle it after a year in barrel. So give or take a couple weeks, it's kind of like I need the barrels now for new wine. So I bottle, and then it sits in bottle for a year, and then I'm ready to sell. And I notice a huge difference in flavor. Like winemaking season is always hardcore, lots of work, no freedom. You are at the mercy of the grapes. And I told you I don't like working for anyone else. So not being able to set my own schedule drives me crazy.
Yeah.
And I'm just ready to be done after winemaking season. And I am, because it's in barrel and I can chill for a little bit. So,
yeah.
But then after I come back 4 to 6 weeks later and I'm a little bit rested, and then I taste the wine that I just put in barrel, it's horrible. Not like it's disgusting, but it's not good wine. And it's really cool to watch it smooth out, the flavors change, and it changes a lot over that first year in barrel, and then still a lot in that first year in bottle, and continuing on more. But those big changes, I think, happen in those first 2 years.
And that's such a great overlap with Bitcoin, because I think a low time preference and delayed gratification, I think that has been lost nowadays. It's very rare. People want the immediate satisfaction. Was that hard for you to get over, or is it pretty natural?
I think it was pretty natural for me. And it also was just the right way to go for the business, because I needed everything everything I could do to make me feel like my wine was going to be good. Because when I first made that first wine, I'd never made wine before. So, and I told you I wasn't that into wine, so I wasn't drinking it being very clear that this is high quality wine that people will buy. So I want to have as much time as possible, just because I don't have to do anything and I know it'll get better. So yeah, when I bottle wine, I reasonably could sell it then and make money, but wine is a branding play. I mean, you have to have good wine, and you sell a story, but if someone drinks your wine and doesn't like it, they're never going to buy it again, because you feel tricked almost, because you buy wine with so little knowledge that it's just a guessing game. And for a lot of people, at least, you go to a store and you pick out a cool label, and that's it. So if it's not good, you'll never buy it again. You're never going to be like, oh, but this 2021 will be really good. I bet that 2020 was just a weird year.
No, yeah. And that's making me think of one of my favorite books. I have the Satoshi's Gold shirt on. I'm a big Ayn Rand fan, but The Fountainhead, where Howard Rourke was super passionate about architecture. Like he's going to do houses the way he sees it, the way he knows is best, and going to take pride in the quality, and he's not going to take any shortcuts or do anything that he doesn't believe in. I don't know. Did you get the same reading The Fountainhead?
Totally. Yeah. I felt one of the morals of The Fountainhead is like if you do something well, believe in yourself and follow it through, and it'll work out. And so it's just wine takes a long time to make. And if I want to sell good wine, I have to wait and figure out stuff to do in the meantime.
So how awesome was it, that first bottle you sold? Do you remember like the first bottle?
I don't remember the first bottle, but it was definitely wild having people taste it and like it, and just learning to kind of let that be normal. And it was, oh, I have good wine. That's crazy. Okay. And once that, I kind of had that baseline set, but I needed a second year. So I sold out of all my wine from the first year. I made a little bit less than I made going forward, just getting started. And then the second year, which was 2022 of sales, I then went in with some confidence, and also I think I had better wine or more of it and had done it before, and so came back with a little bit more confidence. And then throughout the year, it was like, if someone didn't like it, it's like, okay, cool, next. Like, not everyone's going to like my wine.
Yeah.
And so I became a lot more confident in dealing with that criticism because I had so much more success. I had so many more people that came back, oh my God, your wine was so good. I didn't get a hangover afterwards. It's just like, you're the only wine I'm going to drink from now on.
And that was at like farmers markets?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's the bulk of my sales right now. I'm investing in the winery. I had 3 years worth of winemaking investment before I did a single sale. So there's a lot of time catch up to do.
Yeah.
And if I also want to invest in like real estate infrastructure, that's so much more. And I'm kind of at a point where I'd like to just almost get out of above that debt water and see what it's like and be like, okay, which direction I want to go once I can look up above it. And I'm expecting to do that this year. So
yeah, I mean, I think it's totally up to you, is like when and how much you want to scale. Like if you're enjoying the process right now, there's nothing broke about it. And do you like going out and selling it more than producing it, or is there one you prefer more?
I do. I'm an extrovert, and so being in the wine room is not necessarily a perfect fit for me. And it's like, I love that I have something that I make with my hands. It brings me so much pride and joy to share it with people and have something that I can look on and I did that. That's mine. And including, I walk into my cellar, even if I'm not if I'm not going anywhere, and I just like come home after a few days and I just walk into the cellar and be like, this is my kingdom. This is what I built.
Yeah.
And all by myself. I mean, I've had hands here and there, but pretty much everything is just me. So yeah, I like selling wine more. I like talking to people more. I think that's more of a natural fit, but I definitely do get a lot of pride in building things with my hands. And that's, my dad built houses his whole life. I grew up manual labor building things. I built my own house. And so I have that in me. It's just less of a natural fit.
Yeah, they're both great. Mm-hmm. And so you're talking about some people, I mean, you get tons of compliments on your wine, but then some people are like shit posting about it or saying they don't like it. Do you think Twitter has helped you kind of take those hits and realize like it's fine if not everyone loves my wine? Because if you go on Twitter, I feel like
I've never seen anyone on Twitter shit post my wine.
But they shit post. I'm sure they shit post your posts. There's just shit posters everywhere on Twitter.
Yeah, I don't get it as much as a lot of people. I think I just try and I'm a positive person. I try and stay positive. That I don't think that energy really attracts towards me. And also, use your mute and block button. I mean, I'm not going to mute or block someone for one negative post or something, but it's like, I'm on Twitter and I like being on Twitter because I seek out positive energy and I orient my feed towards positive energy. Yeah. Because if I'm directing myself to something, I don't want it to be negative. I've had Instagram like messes with my mental health so bad that I feel like I have a lot more freedom of building a feed on Twitter. So
You already have, yeah, you have a huge following.
so I curate it, and if someone's a dick, I don't spend an hour a day on Twitter to be around negative people.
Yeah.
You know, I want to be around positive people. I want positive energy. I want to come off Twitter being like, man, I just learned something, and wow, I have all these awesome connections. So no, I don't see the negativity.
Have you tried NOSTR?
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you seen a difference between like Damus, or I don't know what you use, or NOSTR?
I use Amethyst.
Amethyst
On Android.
Okay.
And I'll say it's really cool to get zapped.
Yeah.
So a tweet blowing up on Twitter, cool. You're like, okay, that's awesome. And it can get more traction on Twitter. There's more people, and posts just stick around a little bit longer. Excuse me, because the Twitter algorithm will keep feeding it to people. Whereas, at least on Amethyst right now, it's by the moment. If I post something, you're probably not going to see it unless you scroll down for a ways after like 5 or 10 minutes.
Yep.
So things disappear faster. But when you post something and someone sends you, so like getting zapped like 21 sats is cool. You're like, sweet, someone just sent me money. But someone sends you 1,000 sats, you're like, whoa, let's go. And that's 20 cents. But the point I'm trying to make is that it changes your, we want to say Satoshis are the standard, but we don't think in Satoshis all that often every day. Maybe like I sell wine for Bitcoin, but I sell it for the dollar price, and that the number of Satoshis changes. And I buy things with Bitcoin, but it's generally the dollar price. And a zap on NOSTR is the first thing that is inherently priced in Satoshis. There is no other price ever for it.
Yep.
And it's constant. We do it multiple times a day. So you're always thinking about it. I know I zap the same amount every time. And so I know how much that is. And when I go to Wallet Satoshi, it tells me like parentheses 20 cents. And so if that's 21 cents, I know the price of Bitcoin has gone up, but that's really that's how I check Bitcoin prices, knowing my NOSTR zap amount.
And I think you can probably understand it better than anyone else, because you put in that work as an entrepreneur every day, a ton of hard work, and you have that pride of, I created this is mine. And when you start asking about what is money, it should be a receipt of that value, of that productiveness. Like I added something, I produced, and this is how much they valued. But when the money supply isn't fixed, that is so like, how do you judge that? But when it's sats, these 1,000 sats, there's only 21 million. Mm-hmm. Like this will not change. So someone spent their hard-earned sats on my post. Like that's pretty awesome.
It means so much more to get paid in sats than dollars. Yeah. Because everyone's, granted, you can send sats that I receive as sats, but you sent dollars. So, I mean, that's kind of just a badass little hack to do, because you get rid of your dollars, I get sats. It's a win-win, right? Mm-hmm. Over Strike. But yeah, I feel so much more valued because I know that those people have put real value into their sats. It's not just, I have some money. It's, no, I have Bitcoin. This is going to be worth a lot. So why would I spend it? You better have a good reason.
Yeah, a real good reason. And talking about their own work, proof of work type stuff, you talk about your dad built a house. So I was wondering about what you thought of that journey. And you said, is this the same house that you rent out a portion of it?
So my dad built houses his whole life. That was his career.
Okay.
He designed and built houses.
Oh, sweet.
And so I pretty much grew up and always living in a house that he built. And when I moved home in 2020, he and I built another house on our property that I live in. And so we built like a 3-bed, 2-bath, and then half the upstairs is a 1-bedroom apartment that I live in and rent out over the winters, because I moved to a ski town in the winters.
I love that. I'm a huge proponent of they call it like house hacking or whatever, just making extra money out of your spare bedrooms or anything like that. Have you had any roadblocks for that, or what's your thoughts on people renting out rooms?
I mean, I don't think I'd want to live with someone directly, but the idea of this spot was, I know I'm going to live there, but also it's going to be a great asset to the house. Let's just make it as private, as separate as possible, so that when I do move into the main house, I rent that out. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to deal with it. They're just there. And yeah, It's extra money. I mean, it's just, since we were building a house, it just made so much sense to just, oh, let's just add that on.
And out here, there's a lot of regulations. I guess it depends on what city you're in, where they don't let you have like an ADU in the backyard. And where you're at in Colorado, is it pretty tough, or is it
So there's no building code in Delta County.
nice?
We got inspected for electrical and maybe a general inspection or something. But yeah, there's no building code in the county I'm at, and we're literally like right outside of town. So we're got the benefits of town, but the freedom benefits of the county. There is a little fear because I love how clear this is where I am, where everyone's like, oh, the new commissioner is from California, so he likes rules.
He likes rules. Well, you just see that's gonna be our next president, I guess, Gavin Newsom. I don't know. We'll get a lot of rules. But were there any big takeaways from building a house? Because I'm interested. I know they say real estate's a shitcoin, but in today's world where there's so much regulation and inflation runs rampant, I think actually owning any sort of asset works. And even though real estate, like you've seen, takes upkeep and takes work, do you have any?
So I think as a Bitcoiner, like we see Bitcoin as the growth engine. Like Bitcoin's value will go up so much. Why would you ever buy anything else?
Yeah.
But the idea with real estate is not about the value of the real estate changing, because if you buy a 3-bed, 2-bath house somewhere and the value of all that real estate goes up, it's a boat on a rising tide. Like you can't trade that house for a better house. You have more dollars, you have maybe more stored value, maybe, but if you want to move to another house, you can only trade it for an equal house. So the idea is playing it using the ability to go on leverage and use a 30-year fixed rate mortgage at a low percentage rate, if you can afford that, and then getting that cash flow. And Bitcoin is your savings, and you don't want to live off your savings because savings disappear. You want cash flow coming in. And so that's, Rich Dad, Poor Dad talking about that.
Yeah.
He's huge on that, because freedom is not having to spend your day working for money. You can do what you want, and maybe it's work, but it doesn't have to be for money. It can be for passion. And so if you can use real estate as a way to drive passive income, it's a way towards more freedom. And there's a lot of complications to it. I mean, like I have that Airbnb, and it's not that much work, but it's also like someone messaged me at 10 o'clock about something. Oh, now I have to deal with this right now. You know, I don't want to. And it's worth it net on net, but it does add complication to your life. So I think to really get to that freedom point is you have to be in it for a long time. You have to see the exponential returns of just the compounding returns, and I would want to get to a point where I just have property managers completely. Like I don't want to touch that, but you have a long ways to get there. And if it were easy, everyone would do it. So
yeah, right. With only a couple properties, it wouldn't make sense to hire out all that help yet.
Right.
So do you do the changeover cleanings too? Like
no. So I hire a friend who during the winter, he's a farmer. So during the winter, he has a lot more downtime, and he's, it's like ends up being like $50 an hour. So I'm happy to pay him. And because I make money, I don't have to deal with it. It's a buddy I trust, and he's happy for the money. And
you're still getting cash flow.
So. Totally.
All right. So one more thing I wanted to cover. I heard you talk about how, so it's natural wine. It's very natural. You guys it sounds like you don't even water the vineyards that much. You just,
right.
So what effect does that have, or compared that to other wineries that do irrigate?
Right. So we dry farm is what it's called. And we don't explicitly dry farm as in like, if our grapes need water, we will flood irrigate them, where we just pour water down the whole row. And we do maybe once or twice a year, but not enough to get the grapes reliant on it. The grapes are reliant on going down all the way to the water table.
Yeah.
And so when the grape roots are forced to dig super deep, and grape roots do go super deep, so you can force them to do this, they then spread out and they're able to find all this new nutrients in the soil, and thus bring a lot more complexity, the wines become a lot more interesting because there's just a lot more nutrients going on. It's a lot more sense of place. Whereas like you can get a ton of cool, good nutrients going into the plant, if you provide a ton of fertilizer, but you have to continuously do that, and your grapevine then becomes that fertilizer. So you better be doing good fertilizer. If you drip irrigate, which is done in a lot of vineyards, that water is coming from one spot all the time. Why would the roots go anywhere else?
Mm-hmm.
So then they're all stuck at the surface, not like sucking that dirt dry of nutrients, of water, of everything. And you just get a wine that's completely dependent on your inputs. Whereas what we have is wine or grapes that are totally self-reliant. I mean, we just mow, we let the grass sit down. Whatever grass wants to grow there, it grows there naturally. And it's a much more self-reliant vineyard that then leads to self-reliant winemaking. Like, it all feeds back on itself.
So this is my new Bitcoin analogy. I don't know. You can tell me if it's shitty or not, but this is our system. This is the fiat system where you have the easy money, and that's irrigating your field, and everyone knows where the spigot's coming from. What industries? Like right now, it's climate change. You know, if you want some easy money, go make a solar farm or something. And so there's central planners, and they're feeding it out in the system. There's all these zombie companies that couldn't exist were it not for subsidies, tax breaks, or easy money. And because of that, you're just creating the weaker companies, the companies that are propped up on all this. So once that goes away, and once the thing is, there's not unlimited water. That's the thing. Like in this analogy, the system, our debt spiral, it's gonna have to crash. And when that crashes, it's just gonna be ugly. So that's another reason why Bitcoin is get rid of all this fake money, the central planning, this subsidies. Bitcoin itself won't fix it. I don't think. I think it will help a lot and push it towards that way. Eventually, you need a capitalist system. You can't have subsidies, tax breaks, all that, which I guess you could have in a Bitcoin system. But I don't know. Is that a good analogy?
I think so. I look at it a lot of times through the lens of raising a child, where in free markets, in winemaking, and in life, if you coddle your child, make all their decisions and everything. If I irrigate my crops and make them reliant on that plus fertilizer, if I give out money every time something goes bad in an economy, they can't stand on their own, because you just learn to rely on those support structures. And you can't function on your own. Whereas if I learn to live with the mistakes that my child makes, or a bit of time where the grapevine kind of just has to do its own thing, or there's calamity and the strong survive in a financial market, then those strong survive, you learn from their mistakes, and you're stronger the next time. And so, there might be some failure. The kid might fall down, scrape his knee, but like, you got to learn to do that and survive. That's life. And so letting that freedom then begets more freedom, and is in a compounding cycle of more and more self-reliance and freedom, and just ability to function on its own, to the point where I can just be a steward of my wine and just physically put it in the correct positions, and it makes itself.
Yep. I don't think there's anything more self-sovereign than being a Bitcoiner, and then on top of that, being an entrepreneur. So it's very admirable. Thanks you so much for doing what you're doing, and super glad I just ran into you. So thanks for coming out. I was going to give you some plugs, so everyone should go check out at Ben Justman on Twitter, and then www.peonylanewine.com. That's PEONYLANE wine.com. You got anything else there?
I'm on NOSTR, but I'm not sure how to plug it. Probably benj@nostrplebs.com. And
I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
I'll find it and I'll put it in the show notes. Yeah. So follow him on NOSTR, guys. All right. Thank you, Ben.
Hell yeah.
See you. Thank you for listening to the Mike White Podcast. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Mike White Pod, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Y'all have a great day.